Okay. John, could you take us live, please?
Sorry?
John McMurray, could you take us live, please?
I don't understand, believe me.
I'm just asking John McMurray from
John.
our technical support if he'll take the meeting live.
Yeah.
Mr. Almardi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right, do
Yes.
not speak unless somebody asks you a question, yeah?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're ready to go live.
We're ready to go live, John, yeah?
It's
Sorry?
live.
Oh, it's live, right. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's licensing hearing. It's Wednesday, the 16th of June, 2021. My name's Councillor Mudassir Dean, and I'll be chairing today's meeting. I'll just briefly go through some introductions before we go any further. So from my two council colleagues that are joining me today to listen to this hearing and make a decision, Councillor Galloway and Councillor Flitcroft. From licensing, we have Mrs. Klein. From committee admin, we have joining us this morning Mr. Mulholland, and from our legal department we have Mrs. Raby. Now we have the applicant present also, Mr. Hamadi, and joining Mr. Hamadi to support him with his application are Mrs. Clark and Mr. Clark, who are his representatives. So I'll first of all I'd like to ask the two councillors if there are any declarations of interest.
Can I just also clarify, Chair, if you don't mind? Shona Robinson, is she observing from licensing?
Sorry, Chair, I forgot to interrupt to introduce Shona. She's a trainee solicitor with the legal department. She's just observing today. Sorry.
Thank you for that, Mrs. Raby, and welcome to Shona Robinson. Okay, so I just need to ask the councillors, are there any declarations of interest?
No.
Chair, not a declaration of interest as such, but this application is in my ward, but I don't have any particular interest with the application. That's
fine. Okay, so I'll just briefly go through the procedure of today's events, and then we'll make a start with the actual listening to the application. So we've received the bundle a number of days ago from the licensing team. So first of all, the licensing officer will have an opportunity if they want to add anything in addition to the papers that they've sent to all parties that are here present today. We'll have an opportunity to ask the licensing officer any questions at that stage. Then it'll be over to the applicant, who will put their case forward with their representatives, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask them any questions that we have for them. Once that's been done, both parties will have an opportunity to summarise, and once we've summarised your cases, then we'll retire to make a decision. So it'll be myself, Councillor Galloway and Councillor Flitcroft that will make the decision. Once that decision's been made, it'll be sent to you in writing within the next 5 working days, and the applicant will receive that decision. Is everybody clear about that? Is the applicant and Mr. Clark and Mrs. Clark clear about the procedure?
We are, Councillor, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, that's great. Okay, so we'll start off with the application now. So as I said before, we've received the bundle from the licensing team, and Mrs. Klein, is there anything that you'd like to add to that in addition to the information that we've received?
Just to confirm, Chair, that you've had some additional papers from the representative of the applicant, which has been circulated, which wasn't in the original bundle.
Yes, that's fine. Can the other councillors confirm they've received the additional information?
Yes, I have.
Yes, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, that's great. Now,
excuse me,
do the councillors?
Sorry, can I interrupt you? Sorry, can I just ask which additional papers these are?
So, Chair, just to confirm, it's the additional papers from the applicant's representative, which is June Clark. So it's the papers that June circulated to us that we've shared with you.
Right, sorry, I apologise.
Okay, so at this stage, do the councillors have any questions for Mrs. Klein?
I don't know, thank you.
Okay, does Mr. Hamadi or Mr. or Mrs. Clark have any questions for the licensing officer?
No questions.
Right, thank you. Okay, so now it's over to the applicant and their representatives to make a decision, put your case forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Good morning, everybody. My name is June Clark, and I have been a licensing consultant with JMC Licensing for 16 years. We are the agents for the applicant, Mr. Sarwan Hamadi. Mr. Hamadi has recently taken over a lease of the premises in George Street, and the landlord, he owns the ice cream parlour next door. Mr. Hamadi holds a personal licence, is the nominated DPS, and he will be working full-time in the shop. My client's new shop is a small grocery store selling a variety of dry foods, fresh meats, fresh bread, and of course general household items. My client is also hoping to introduce an additional service for the local community, which is the parcel drop-off and collection. The shop opened on the 15th of May and had the benefit of 2 temporary licenses, which the second one finished on Tuesday, the 25th of May. During that time, my client experienced no problems with any customers or any antisocial behaviour from any youths hanging around outside. The hours requested are respectful, from 8 in the morning until 10, Sunday to Thursday, and 8 until 11 on a Friday and Saturday evening. As identified on the plans, the layout of the shop is quite open. The fridge has been designated for the display of alcohol is sited next to the counter on the opposite side of the room from the soft drinks fridge. All spirits will be stored and sold from behind the counter. There is a CCTV system with strategically positioned internal cameras covering the full interior of the shop, and 1 camera on the outside covering the front entrance. The building used to be a public house and was bought several years ago and has now been converted into small commercial units on the ground floor. Mr. Hamadi only lives 3.3 miles away. Mr. Sarwan Hamadi's brother, who has owned another shop for 5 years, has helped with the opening and will help with the running of the shop until it is established. And just to add that Mr. Hamadi helped his brother in the shop for 3 years. Letter of representation. The objection that we've received is in the form of an email that appears to be anonymous, as it contains no contact information, number or address of the writer. So in fact, anybody could have written this from anywhere in the country or perhaps in the world. Under the revised guidance of section 182 of the Licensing Act, it states disclosure of personal details. It says where a notice of a hearing is given to an applicant, the licensing authority is required under the Licensing Act 2003 in brackets hearing regulations 05 to provide the applicant with copies of the relevant representations that have been made. In certain circumstances, persons wishing to make representations may be reluctant to do so because of fears of intimidation if their personal details are divulged. In such circumstances, the Home Office guidance recommends, under 9.27, in exceptional circumstances, persons making representations to the licensing authority may be reluctant to do so because of fears of intimidation or violence if their personal details, such as name and address, are divulged to the applicant. 9.28, it states, where licensing authorities consider that the person has a genuine and well-founded fear of intimidation and may be deterred from making a representation on this basis, they may wish to consider alternative approaches. Under 9.30, it says the licensing authority may also decide to withhold some or all of the person's personal details from the applicant, giving only minimal details such as the street name or general location within a street. However, withholding such details should only be considered where the circumstances justify such action. Unfortunately, we have not been privy to any information about this representation, especially as to the location of the objector. So the questions we ask is, do they live in the vicinity? Do we know if they have local knowledge of the area? How will their lives be affected if the premises license be approved today? Are they a resident or a rival local business owner concerned that this may affect his trade? And what circumstances justify an action whereby their personal details, all their personal details, are automatically redacted even without a request to do so by the applicant? These are important questions that we ask because we must know the answer to ascertain whether the contents of this letter are genuine or vexatious, and there is no evidence to support their statement. If there were problems in the area, it would be so easy to take photographs of the gangs of youths claiming to be up to 20 people at a time, or CCTV footage, but there are none. We also notice that the police, who are the experts in these matters, have not submitted a representation. Therefore, they and the other responsible authorities and local councillors have all accepted and approved my client's application. Under Section 158 of the Licensing Act, it is a criminal offence to knowingly and recklessly make a false statement in connection with a premises licence. And under Section 2, for the purposes of Section 1, a person is to be treated as making a false statement if he produces, furnishes, signs, and otherwise makes use of a document that contains a false statement. We don't know whether this is a false statement or not. Well, we do, because we know it's not happened. This offence now carries an unlimited fine. It's actually in the last paragraph of the public notice that was displayed on the site for a duration of 28 days. So the objector must have read this and yet ensued to continue to submit a false statement. Then they proceeded to put this information in writing, knowing it was going to be published in the public domain. My client is most distressed and concerned about the content of this letter that contains a very serious false allegation, and we asked the panel to release the personal details of the objector, as my client would like to bring about a private prosecution now that this false accusation is now in the public domain. The letter also contains numerous references to crime and antisocial behaviour in the area. We have also submitted in our support of the application the police crime statistics for the previous 22 months, and for ease of reading, I prepared a summary. This identified a very low crime area. We also note an absence of the police representation here today. The police are the experts in crime and disorder and are the main source of guidance and intelligence, and all licensing panels seek to obtain their advice from. But again, their absence today confirms that they have approved our application in its current form and have never asked for any additional conditions. This reinforces to all parties here today that our application, in their expert opinion, does not undermine any of the licensing objectives. Prior to submission of this application, we conducted a systematic and detailed risk assessment, taking into consideration the significance of the following documents. Number one was the Bolton Council Statement of Licensing Policy 2019 to 2024, the PSPO for the borough area, the revised guidance under Section 182, the 4 licensing objectives, the Licensing Act, the Portman Group Code of Practice, which is the 6th edition, age-restricted products and service framework, code of practice, and finally Equality Act 2010. Each application for the grant of a licence will be considered and determined on its own merits, but it can address within the direct control of the individual holding the licence concerned. There are other systems and enforcement mechanisms in place to deal with behavioural issues. The risk assessment was completed to ensure appropriate regard to the location, character and condition of the premises, the nature and extent of the proposed use, and the persons likely to use the premises. The operating schedule was then mapped out in line with Bolton Council's SOLP support and their supporting policies and documents, and how the operating schedule will be supporting the 4 licensing objectives. The conditions that we offer today inside the operating schedule, we believe are robust and are fully supportive of all 4 licensing objectives. In line with section 1.10 of Bolton's SOLP, our conditions are appropriate for the promotion of licensing objectives. They are precise and enforceable. They're unambiguous and clear in what they intend to achieve. They do not duplicate any other statutory requirements, duties or responsibilities. They're tailored to the individual type, location and characteristics of the premises. They're not standardised. They do not replicate offences. They're proportionate, justifiable, they're written in prescriptive format, and they do not seek to manage the behaviour of customers once they are beyond the direct management of the licence holder. When preparing the operating schedule, our application, I would like to direct you to one of the main subsections, section 4 of section 17, where an application for a premises licence must fulfil the steps which it is proposed to take to promote the licensing objectives. As previously stated, we composed a comprehensive risk assessment and concluded that a minimum of 22 robust conditions were required. 7 of these conditions relate to the operation of the CCTV. These are the main areas of the application: continuous running of the system, 1 camera covering the exterior of the premises, weekly completion of a CCTV logbook to include any failures, incident register, proof age of records, which is the challenge 25, alcohol restrictions to persons, training, monitoring outside the premises, deliveries, signage requesting customers to leave the area quickly and quietly, notices for proxy signage, and again, under the protection of children, we've got the proof of age, challenge 25, and training. What is being considered today is the determination of an application. The burden is on the applicant to show that the proposals in and around the operating schedule are capable of promoting the licensing objectives. We believe our application does this. Our client will also have the necessary tools in place that will help him to reinforce and underpin the licensing objectives. Mr. Hamadi will be operating a bespoke full set of compliance logbooks that we have designed and used successfully around the country since 2007. There is no evidence in the objector's email today that challenges or criticises the application itself. After giving consideration to the presentation, together with it and our operating schedule, we now ask the panel of your professional opinion: is our application sufficient enough to promote and support the 4 licensing objectives? And if not, the panel must then follow section 18, which is determination of an application, which states, having regard to the representation, to take such steps mentioned, if any, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of the licensing objective. Just to finally add, both the photograph in the representation is a photograph that could have been obtained from anywhere. It states a false claim that this is what they're selling for £5. It's not anything. It's just a photograph that's been taken off the website. It's a malicious claim, and it needs to be addressed, and it will be addressed. And so that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. Just before I move over to questions, just an observation. You mentioned a number of times in your presentation that the police and other authorities had not made a representation, therefore they approve the application. Well, I'm sorry, it's not their job to approve the application. It's the job of this committee to approve the application. Just like yourself, they're entitled to make a representation. And on this occasion, they decided not to. However, they are not the people or the organisation that decide on this application. It's us as a committee. So with all due respect, I think that's something that needs to be pointed out. Can we move over to questions? Are there any questions from councillors?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councillor Galloway.
It's just the crime reports. You know, I'm totally understand. You know, the police haven't put up any objection, but I with the police crime reports, I have found in the past with my ward, there has been nil crimes, because when I know there have been crimes. It's just that their reporting has been very poor. I think maybe due to IOPS. So just because there is a zero there, it doesn't mean there's no crime. It's just that it's not a very good way of it's not a very good up to date way of recording crime. So I didn't give much weight to the bundle of emails that was sent to me.
Clark, would you like to comment on that, please?
Yes, I would actually. It's actually in the guidance that people who are looking for the crime statistics actually do should consult the crime statistics reported by the police. We can only go by this information. I know people in the area may say different, but that's all we can go by. If the police are not reporting the crimes, or if people are not reporting the crimes, there's not a lot we can do about it. We can only go on what is public, what is published nationally.
Oh, of course. It wasn't any slight on what you were presenting. It was just I don't particularly find that very helpful as a way of finding out what crime used to be. And I think it was 2019. It was really poor, and part of 2020. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Galloway. Any further questions?
May I just add one more point? This is the reason why I went back 22 months, because I went back 8 months prior to the start of the COVID outbreak. So it's actually, you know, it was there before as well. So it's a long time, 22 months.
Thank you.
It's not, you know, it's not the last previous 12 months.
Yeah. Any further questions from councillors?
Yeah, can I ask a question, please, Chair?
Yes, Councillor Flitcroft.
It's this for Mrs. Clark. You mentioned in your representation that the business had been run with 2 temporary event notices. Or was that Mrs. Klein? I can't remember. But can you just confirm that there have been any issues while it's been operating under these temporary notices?
Not that we are aware of. No, it went, according to the applicant, it went very smoothly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from officers?
No, thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, so there's no further questions there. So we'll move over to the summary stage now. So Mrs. Clown, would you like to summarise, please?
I certainly will. Thank you. To my summary. The summary is very short. The application was, I understand what the councillor was saying about, the panel today will approve the application. However, that when the application is sent to the responsible authorities, including the police, as well as the police, they have to vet the application and approve it in their own right, and then they send a response back. So if they don't object to it, it means that they personally, their department, or that particular responsible authority has approved the licence application. That's what I was referring to. So the application was served upon the 9 responsible authorities, including the police, child protection, trading standards, public protection.
Bear with me a moment. Is that Mrs. Clark?
It is, yes.
Yeah, it's Mrs. Klein's opportunity to summarise first.
Oh, I do apologise. I thought you said Clark. I do apologise.
Thank you, Chair. It's Ms. Klein. Just obviously, very shortly, just to outline that at page 8 of the report are the options that are available for you to consider today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Klein. Now it's over to you, Mrs. Clark. You don't need to repeat everything you've already said, but you can just carry on with summarising from where you left off.
I certainly will. Okay. What we have under 9.3 of the revised guidance actually states the authority's determination should be evidence-based, justified as being appropriate for the promotion of licensing objectives. What we have in the room today is the evidence of the crime stats for the 22 months, and also the conditions, the 22 conditions that we are offering to support the licensing objectives. And what we're asking now is in the panel's opinion, is our application sufficient enough to promote and support the 4 licensing objectives? And then if not, the panel must follow section 18, which states, having regard to the presentation, you know, as it considers appropriate for the promotion of licensing objectives. Should the panel consider that they have any identified areas of weakness in the application, then my client is more than happy to discuss and accept any further conditions that the panel believe is necessary for the application to fully support the 4 licensing objectives. And you know, if there was anything serious in this, then I'm sure that one of the responsible authorities would be in the room today. So we're respectfully asking that the panel approve our application today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Clark. Is there anything that Mr. Hamadi would like to add to that just before we retire to make a decision? No.
Okay. He is in the meeting, but
yes, yeah, I'll take that as a no. That's fine. So as I've said, we'll retire to make a decision now, and that decision will be sent to the applicant within the next 5 working days. So thank you to everyone that's attended today, and other than so there'll be the councillors, myself, legal services, and Ian Mulholland from committee admin, who will stay for the remainder of the meeting. Everybody else, could you please leave the meeting, and also Mr. McMurray, could you end the live transmission? Thank you for attending.
Councillor, may I just ask a question before?